Astrology, and this is the birth chart for Bill Gates. And I'm going to do things a little bit differently. If you're new to my channel, you can check out my other videos. I have hundreds of birth chart analysis, and I'll continue to do more on a daily basis. And in this chart, I literally looked at this chart for 30 seconds. I have seen it before, so I knew he had a moon in Aries and a Scorpio sun. And like I said, just now I looked at it for 30 seconds, hit record, and I'm just going to look at for the most part, the negative things in this chart because it's so blatantly obvious. And if there was a bad birth chart, I did a video on is there such thing as a bad birth chart. I'll link that down in the description. There really isn't such a thing as a bad birth chart or bad astrology. It's really how it's used. But these people, most people aren't aware of astrology. They don't believe in it. They don't think it's real. They ignore it, etc. So in that case, you're more likely if you do have some bad aspects and whatnot. It's like a person that needs to go to therapy or needs psychological help. If they're denying it, they may be more likely not to learn from their lessons and improve, etc. So first thing I want to look at here when the sun is above this line here, the AC, so we see is rising as Cancer. When the planets are above that, it's considered the day portion of the chart, and below it is the night portion. And when the sun is below that line, the person was born at night, and when it's above that line, they're born during the day. So here we can see the sun is in the night half where it doesn't necessarily like to be, and the moon is in the day half where it doesn't like to be. So the moon prefers to be in the night side and the sun on the day side, obviously. And we can see things like Saturn. We can look at Saturn. Saturn likes to be on the day side, prefers than the night side. Mars likes to be on the night side. We can see as Mars here. And Jupiter on the day side, and here he has it on the night side. So we see there is a lot of incongruencies there when it comes to sect. That's what we call it in astrology, sect, S-E-C-T. And the ruler of this chart is the moon, and it's in Aries, where in the 10th house, and the moon, I would argue that the moon doesn't like to be in Scorpio and Capricorn. And we could argue that the next worst place for a moon is in Aries, and it's in the 10th house, the Capricorn house. So it's kind of like a double signature there, and it's ruling his chart. So this guy is super emotionally, you could say, if I want to interpret this, knowing who he is, he's motivated to be in charge. He's emotionally, not only just motivated, he's emotionally driven. The core of his chart, the ruler of his chart is the moon. He's competitively and emotionally driven to win. And we don't really think of that as like a Bill Gates as being that person, but see, the moon is internal. So this is oftentimes you see like moon in Aries, and it's the internal makeup, the personality of the person. So he does have a sun in Scorpio, but the sun is conjunct Neptune. And then you see the rising, there's conjunct Uranus, and it's in Cancer. So the more outward planets where we see the sun in the rising and with Uranus there, you see him as being this tech giant with Uranus on the rising, someone who's maybe a little bit aloof, a little weird. And with the sun, Neptune, you might think it's a scientist. So even though it's in Scorpio, and even though we equate Mars and Pluto with Scorpio, but especially Pluto, it's kind of like an undercover aggression as well. So if you were going to have like a sun in Scorpio, or if you were going to be like more like an outwardly aggressive person or someone who sees that, it would probably be in a fire sign or an air sign, not a water sign. But definitely with it conjunct Neptune there, he doesn't really give that impression. He's known as he's a scientist. etc. You can even see the ruler of the MC is Mars, and it's conjunct Mercury, and it's in Venus. So with his Mars being in Venus, he kind of looks like people think maybe he's a nice guy. And by the way, that Mars is in the fourth house, where it doesn't necessarily like to be, because it's in fall in Cancer, the sign Cancer, and with the fourth house there, Mars would rather be in the 10th house. And it's also conjunct Mercury. So we see, a person who has Mars conjunct Mercury, they can have war on their mind, competition on their mind, assertiveness, etc. But see, when it's in the fourth house, he's good at hiding it. So I'm sure these things are on his mind. Mental things, obviously, he's known as being a mental guy, scientist, and we can see Virgo on the third house cusp. So, I mean, with that Mercury alone in the fourth, I mean, again, more emotionally driven. And hey, maybe this guy is emotionally driven to help people, but I would say in that case, he's emotionally driven to a fault, sticking his nose in business where it doesn't belong. And if you ever seen some documentaries or some information regarding him going into Africa, I think some countries have banned him from going into Africa because of him bringing his vaccines in there for testing, and that's exactly what I'm referring to here. We can see back to that 10th house moon that I was looking at, being like someone who's interested in being on top, super competitive. And we have Jupiter Pluto conjunct in Leo, and it's in the Aries decan. So it's got a Mars, it's influenced by Mars being the ruler of Aries. And with Jupiter in Leo, a person can be very into his ego, larger than life, etc. We can look as well at this Uranus, as I said, being a scientist, being aloof, not. So when we think of like science and religion, there's an in-between that, from my perspective, there's an in-between perspective that considers both sides, and you can kind of come into what I would call a truth, more of a truth of how things work and what's going on. He would be more on the science side, too far, and that's what we see here with this Uranus. Somebody who wouldn't consider the soul and the evolution of a soul in the life, so someone who like him could, in his mind, justify many of the things that he does, and many of what I would call the negative things. And a lot of people think that this man is downright evil. He would be able to justify it, and the people that support him would be able to justify it because their brains are wired, I would argue, or I would assume, probably rightly, that they're wired the same way. You could call it the atheist perspective. I'm okay with that. And we look here at his south node. It's in air, it's in Gemini, it's in the 11th, the house of Aquarius, and it's ruled by Mercury. So it comes back to this Mercury again. And we have a almost, 30, 60, 58, 68, 74 degrees. We have a quintile between Mercury, moving just away from a quintile between Uranus and Mercury. So there's no doubt, you could see here in the chart, there's a talent there, a skill, a creative ability when it comes to Uranian thinking. That does not mean in and of itself that it is good, or a quintile that it is good. It's how you use it. And this man has a lot of responsibility when it comes to how to use his mind and his power with that Jupiter-Pluto conjunction. North Node is in Sagittarius. Saturn is conjunct Venus. So again, we have Saturn in a sign that it doesn't necessarily want to be in. It's in the Cancer decan where it definitely doesn't want to be, and it's conjunct Venus, who we think Venus, Venus in the opposite, and Venus is in Scorpio. Venus is in its fall in Scorpio. Venus likes to be in Taurus and Libra. Does not want to be conjunct Saturn, that's for sure. We see his Mercury is conjunct Neptune as well. Mercury does not like to be with Neptune. Mercury is, so let's compare that to, say, a Mercury in Virgo or Mercury in Gemini. Would be better than someone who has all these mental characteristics, but then has that conjunct Neptune. I mean, I would say it's, and then Neptune is also in the decan of Libra that is Gemini, so it's ruled by Mercury. It's kind of like Mercury, the all the good qualities that this man could have when it comes to Mercury can be clouded by delusion, Neptune being delusion. You see the Mars Moon aspect as well, the Mars opposite Moon. Mars opposite Moon in 2 houses and signs that they don't want to be in. I mean, talk about someone who needs therapy. A lot of therapy. See, people think that therapy is often for people who have serious mental health issues, like physiological health issues. Well, then there's the therapy that's pretty much also peddled widespread about, everyone needs therapy, etc., to improve themselves and make themselves a better person. That's this guy. Serious need of psychoanalysis, which will never happen. So I think I'm going to leave it there for now. You could also throw in the part of fortune there is in the 8th house in Aquarius. So definitely making money off of being a scientist, scientific endeavors. Yeah, I'm going to leave it there for now. Please feel free to share this. I would very much appreciate it, and hope you have a great day.